Oh, no.
Yes.
Tell me that.
You've been playing golf?
No, I just had to go buy my son golf clubs.
Oh, there you go.
That's a treat.
We're all wearing our wishful thinking colors tonight.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, we're close, kids.
Yeah.
1 minute. All right. Welcome tonight to the council meeting. We'll start the meeting with Councilor Quan's giving the invocation.
So last time we were here, we talked briefly about Martin Luther King Day, and so we just passed President's Day, and I thought it would be interesting just to look up a couple things about the two presidents that we most often remember on President's Day. And so one thing that I found out about George Washington that I really hadn't ever thought about was that he was considered to be a man of great character. So, we all heard the little story about the cherry tree when we were kids, but that story went along with the fact that he was very well respected in his dealings with other people. And that was before he ever became General Washington, and then before he became our first president. And he never had any children of his own, and yet he's considered the father of our country. So thinking about perhaps all of the lives that he touched. And then something that I read about Abraham Lincoln that again just gave me pause for thought was the fact that he had to make some very tough decisions against what seemed to be popular opinion. Those people that were in Washington at the time and controlling things. But he went ahead and stood up for what he thought was right. And if you think about it, the country went through the Civil War, which I think has to be one of the most darkest times in our history where families were fighting against families. And yet they reelected him to president in order to promote the healing after the war. And he didn't get to fulfill all of that, having been assassinated. So just keeping those two things in mind when we say our brief invocation tonight. So Father, as we think about these two presidents in our past history, we just ask that we sitting up here might also display that type of character that George Washington was known for, that we might treat others as we would like to be treated, but that also we could have the vision to think about how things will affect people in years to come as we make decisions. And we think about Abraham Lincoln and the times in which he stood alone, it seemed, and yet he was standing up for what he thought were rights of all people and what he thought was the right thing to do in your eyes. And so we ask that we might also have the courage to be that kind of person. And as the world tonight maybe celebrates excesses in some places before we enter into Ash Wednesday tomorrow morning, we are just grateful that here in this city that we have enough and that we are able to make decisions that can move our community forward, that by the faithful contributions of our taxpayers and the conscientious way in which we consider how to use that money, that we've been able to be a solvent city and we've been able to not only hold our own, but move forward in this difficult time. So we ask that you bless each of us with clear minds, with humble hearts, and with the willingness to serve tonight. Amen.
Amen. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Man, that was great.
All right, thank you, Diane. Let the minutes reflect that there are 6 members present tonight. Councilman Josh Finch is absent. Remind you the quorum has been achieved, and it'll take 4 votes to pass any legislation tonight. With that, I'd like to welcome you all, our visitors. Thank you for coming out tonight Appreciate that. Lynn, you have anything to say on the fund report that was presented?
I do not have anything to say on the fund report.
Questions?
Should we do minutes?
Yeah, we can. Any questions on the fund report?
Nope.
All right, that's one we'll miss then. All right. Jack, do you have anything to say about the minutes?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I propose that we pass the minutes of last February
All right.
6th.
Is there a second?
I will second that.
Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
I will abstain since I was absent.
All right, passed 5-0. 5-0 to 1. All right, cable franchise fees are shown for the last quarter of 2022 is a little over $13,000. All right, let's move into unfinished business. Tonight will be the second reading of ordinance 2023-0202. Have Danny Harlan, HR Director, come up and present.
This is the amendment to add a position to the police department as a senior systems administrator. I think we've realized that there's a lot more work down there. This position will help us create that supervisory role for an assistant system administrator to come on board.
All right, I'll remind you that this passed on first reading at the last meeting. I believe it was 6-0. No, excuse me, 5-1. Comments, questions?
I think as we've all thought about this position in the last couple of weeks, that we've realized that in bringing before us that this kind of change is needed, that it also might be a good idea to look across boards at positions that we have. And so two choices really that I see that would be before us, and one would be to not act on this, or one would be to act on it with the task given then back to our Wage Management Committee to conduct an overview of all the positions that we do have in the city and see if there are other places where we have employees that have their jobs have evolved into something other than what their job description was, and their responsibilities have evolved further than that. And so I would like to make a motion that we pass 2023-0202 on second reading to get this one straightened out, and then also add to that the turning it over to the Wage Committee to take a look at other positions within the city that also might need the same type of adjustments, and to bring that back to the council so that we're not caught in this position again of having to react to something, but that we're being proactive when we look at our employees.
So there's a motion to approve ordinance 2023-0202. Is there a second?
I would second it.
All right. Motion's been made and seconded. Now, further discussion.
I just want to kind of piggyback on what Diane said. I agree. I think this is a really good opportunity for us to maybe sit down and take a look at positions throughout the city. I think one thing I'm really concerned about too is that we make sure in some of these important positions that we do have backup people. I mean, no day is promised, and we never know what's going to happen the next day, and I want to make sure that we have, people that can step in and maybe not immediately take over, but at least, fill a transitionary gap or something. And so I know that's something that's really of concern to me. And even the prospect that maybe some people, we need to look at salaried versus non-salaried positions and so forth.
Cindy, I'd agree with that. I think this has been an ongoing issue. I know Jennifer spent a lot of her time on this every year. Those members of the Wage Committee can vouch for that, looking and trying to keep our salaries in line with the external wages, keep folks online and where their wages should be, has been a constant concern. This council has reacted very well to that, but it continues, and this is just another case of that. And I know Denny has looked at the salary study that Jennifer had commissioned, and we utilized some of that this last year. It's literally an ongoing thing, and I couldn't agree more that we have to really focus to continue to do that. So I appreciate those comments.
I would also encourage Denny and the Wage Committee to look for other ways as well. You know, maybe some restructuring needs to happen. Warsaw's growing. It's growing fast, and more services are asked of us daily, and it's going to require more people. And in order to stay out of a predicament that none of us want to be in, I would say we look forward to how we can maybe think out of the box a little bit and try to figure out how we can keep things from making us reactionary. Let's be proactive.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
I do want to remind the council that I did ask Denny when this situation came up to check with the Wage Committee, and I know he couldn't solicit any more than 3 opinions, and he got 2 opinions that were favorable, and then he got one. He didn't hear from the 3rd, so we knew that this was a situation that we were still going to have to come back to this body for that approval. You know, and we don't like to be in that position. But this was just a case where it needed to be done for the benefit of the city.
I appreciate the discussion among council members as we work through this. Some concerns that Mike raised, and again, if you want to talk about that, just that instead of reactionary, to be proactive with the Wage Committee. But I'm comfortable with it. I've talked to Mike about that. Mike, how are you feeling based on what the board and just a formal review by the committee? Is this acceptable? I know related to what Diane talked about, that you were thinking maybe we should meet sooner than later for other positions. How are you feeling tonight?
Well, I was not here at the last meeting. I think I have been appointed to this board since the Wage Committee met, so I was not privy to that conversation. I've had extensive conversations with the head of HR and the mayor. I've learned a lot about the situation. I was hoping that in my new position as being on the Salary and Wage Committee, that I could meet with that committee along with the head of HR and clear up a few things that I had concerns about, make some changes to. So that apparently is not going to happen before this vote, which I find a little disappointing. So I'll probably have to abstain from the vote. I do look forward to working with the committee. I do, and I think I've expressed that to Director of HR as well as the mayor, and to you, and to the council president. And I want to move forward. You know, I am a proactive guy, and I don't like kicking the can down the road. I just had some questions that I would like to have addressed. So moving forward, that's hopefully where we could go.
I just want to say thank you, Denny, for taking the time to sit down to talk to any and all of us that had questions.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
I know I sat down and talked to Denny for, what, a half hour a day? Something like that.
Good conversations.
I'm bothering you all the time, but anyway, I'm trying to find out exactly how I want to vote. And after speaking with you, I do know how I want to do it. So
Thank you,
I
Jerry.
appreciate your help.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Any others?
Cindy, your concerns have been addressed. Are you okay? Connected that,
I
Mike's.
think, I'm still a little uncomfortable with the one-off situation, but yet I'm not uncomfortable with the dollar amount or anything like that. I guess I was concerned whether there was going to be overtime and so forth that was going to go along with that. Again, I had the opportunity to speak with HR, and I think that helped me.
All right, any final comments? Okay, there's a motion on the floor to approve ordinance 2023-0202 on second and final reading. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right,
I
Thank
will
you.
abstain.
and one abstention passes 5 to 0 to 1. One abstention, 5 to 0 with one abstention. And I'd like to thank the council for working through this. I know it was not an easy issue, and I totally agree, we don't want to get put into the position, but the way the labor market's going, it's just something we have to maintain attention to. And those of you on the wage committee certainly appreciate your work in digging in and making sure that we're doing the right thing, and all of you for that fact. I appreciate that. So,
I agree with you, Joe. We don't want to be put in that position, but sometimes we can't avoid it. It just happens.
so thank you all. All right, item 2 under old business is ordinance 2023-0201, which is a second reading, approving bonds for the Warsaw Parks District. Just earlier tonight, a couple hours ago, the Parks Board approved the bonds and the other issues that were with them. And before I get into trouble saying the wrong thing, I'm going to have Randy come up and explain what we're considering tonight.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor. I'm Randy Rumpola with Barnes & Thornburg with offices in South Bend. And as the mayor indicated, what's before you is an ordinance approving of the issuance of Park District bonds. The Park Board did meet last month and again earlier tonight. Last month adopting a preliminary resolution, tonight having a public hearing on that, and then adopting a confirming resolution, and also then adopting a bond resolution which approved of the issuance of the bond subject to your action tonight. The bond resolution authorizes bonds in an amount not to exceed $2.8 million at a max interest rate of 6% with a final maturity not later than January 1, 2032. I reference all those. Those are parameters for the bond issue. We expect that the principal amount will be less than $2.8 million, and certainly the interest rate should be less. But as I've said, I know in front of you before, to go through the approval process, we have to set parameters with the understanding that the market will dictate the final terms of the bonds. And so that's essentially what that bond resolution that they adopted provided for. And again, it would fund the maintenance and garage administration offices for use by the Parks Department. I'm happy to answer any questions about the bond resolution they adopted further, but from a calendar standpoint, we're scheduled to talk with the rating agency in early March, and again, assuming you adopt the resolution tonight, we'd move forward with that, and then look to sell bonds toward the end of April, or end of March, closing in early April. Sitting here tonight looking at the calendar, we're actually closing the week of spring break, so I'm sure we'll be coming to the mayor and others with documents long before that, because I suspect some people may not be around that week.
All right, Diane, do you want to give just a quick thumbnail from the Park Board meeting tonight?
Sure. So there was no one present for the public hearing, and the only one that asked any questions was myself of Randy. And the question that I asked, and you just might all be interested in the answer, was if these bonds are going to close in April or May, when is payment due, since we wouldn't start getting any of the tax revenue until the following year? And the term you used was a long
payment.
Long payment.
Yep.
And that the long payment meant that when they sell the bonds, the first payment will not be due until the July after next year, after we've received the first distribution of tax funds from this. So That was just a question I had, like, is there going to be a gap in here and how would we fill that? And other than that, nobody really had any questions at all on the park board. Of course, we discussed it very thoroughly the meeting before, and so I think there was, at this point, a comfort with it. And we won't see a bond schedule until closer to the time that the bonds then are sold, because of the fact that they have to be able to put in the terms of the sale in order to show when the payments are due. So it's a little bit different than some of the like TIF resolutions that Jeremy brings to us, that we actually see what's going to be due when.
We did get Baker Tilly ran an analysis, I think I mentioned at the last meeting, and it shows these bond payments aren't till next year, and it will impact the tax rate just a little over 2.5 cents.
Yeah.
Starting next year. And then hopefully, as we move into the street department project, that will add about another cent and a half, about another 2.25 cents to the rate. But this bond is an 8-year payback, whereas the lease rental bonds for the street department are projected to be 20 years. So just FYI, the impact will not be felt until 2024.
And again, just, I guess I mentioned that we're able to do this because of the generous contribution that we received from Zimmer Biomet, that we're able to fund this at such a low amount of money for that entire project.
I would mention too, just from a bond sales standpoint, I know the mayor
The Zimmer
reminded
Biomet's
me.
for the pavilion, but
Yeah, it's that doesn't have anything to do with this project. Just
Yeah.
for clarity, Zimmer
Yeah.
Biomet did not get involved in this.
but we didn't have to spend as much money there, so we had other. Yeah.
Right.
I was just going to mention from the bond sales standpoint, Andy Mauser from Baker Tilly also ran the analysis of how to sell the bonds. I think given the short term and the smaller amount, in some markets, it would be very ripe for a bank to purchase it without having to go through the sale process. The sale process does add some costs of issuance up front, the cost of the rating, the underwriting, but his analysis showed that where interest rates are in the current market, a bank purchase bond likely would have a higher interest rate, so that over the 8-year period, the payback, you would pay more in interest. So that by selling the bonds in the open market, which he's recommending, and getting the rating, you'll actually save money in the long run because the interest rate will be lower, so over the payback. So I think that's the direction we're headed.
Right.
Now, if the market changes dramatically in the next few weeks, we might change. And the resolution the park board adopted provides for that flexibility. But right now, we're looking at an open market rated issue.
Thank you. Questions?
What is that open market rate right now?
It's somewhere in the mid-3s,
Okay.
tax
So it could
exempt.
tick up between now and then.
Pardon?
It could tick up
It
between
could,
now and then.
it could, it actually had come down, I won't say a fair amount, but it had come down some. So who knows? I mean, it could go up, it could come down. The Fed just met, obviously, and they're scheduled to meet again in March. So it's possible it could tick a little up or a little down.
Okay. Any other questions?
Randy, since we don't get our disbursement until like the end of June, would the payment be due July 1st or July 15th?
I
Or
think-
haven't we thought that far yet?
I think it's set up to be paid July 1st, and I think there was some email correspondence that Andy may have had with you way back, if you remember, if I'm remembering correctly, but I think the payment, and it has to do somewhat with the DLGF in terms of the timing of the payments, but I think they're set to be January 1st and July 1st. But, so.
Right.
So if there aren't any other questions, on behalf of the park board, I would just like to make a motion that we approve ordinance 2023-0201 on second reading.
Thank you, Diane. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Cindy. Any further final comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Let the minutes reflect that, passed 6-0. Thanks, Randy, for all your help. Jeremy, I know you did a lot as well, and appreciate that. Larry and your group. Got a nice building to show for it. All right, thank you. All right, now into new business. I'll turn it over to the council president. Tonight, we need to appoint a council representative to the redevelopment commission to take the place of Mr. Rick Snodgrass, who has served our redevelopment commission honorably for many years.
Thank you. Yes, last month, Rick Snodgrass, a longtime member, resigned from the Redevelopment Commission. I want to thank Rick for his service to the community of Warsaw. Though I never saw him in action, I've been told of his diligent preparation for meetings and sound advice he gave others, drawing from years of experience. These are no doubt disciplines he honed during his career as a local banker. Each year, when appointment was up for renewal, council members expressed to me their reliance on Rick's counsel. His shoes are huge. He will be missed. That said, this council was tasked with finding someone to fill the vacancy. A committee of myself and the 2 council members currently on redevelopment started with a list of 10 names, 6 men and 4 women, submitted by this council here. Qualifications for this position are residency and age of 18 years. I was able to cut 6 off the list due to residency. Councilman Gross, Clondaris, and myself met to discuss the remaining 4. We narrowed it down to 2 and prioritized them. If the first did not accept nomination to this council, then I would move on to the second. That was kind of the process. This first name on the list stated that he would be willing to serve if elected. And his name is Bill Curl. He's in the audience this evening. Bill, his professional career, he's retired as a vice president of regional lending for Mutual Federal, Kosciuszko, and Elkhart counties. And he's been retired for 4 years. His community activities include 1986-87 KLA member. He's past membership in Lions and Kiwanis, past member of the local Home Builders Association, and some of my favorite, Cub Master, Scout Master, District Chair, and District Trainer for Boy Scouts. Currently, Bill still serves as a Senior Services Driver and Boy Scout Advisory Committee. I've known Bill throughout our years of Boy Scout leadership. His personality demonstrates steady, measured responses. Bill has a heart for the community, as evidenced by his past community activities. This, along with his experience and financial expertise, make Bill a good fit for this important position. I look forward to this council hopefully passing this nominee, and he's just a good guy.
Is that a nomination, Mr. President?
Well, it would be, but I have to let 2 others speak first. And I'll turn it over to the other 2 on the redevelopment.
Well, I'm so excited that Bill is willing to step forward. He's helped my family as a banker, myself personally, and his expertise will greatly help the Redevelopment Commission. He's been a part of this community, helping this community forever. This will just be another step for him to serve. So thanks, Bill.
Of the 3 of us, I probably knew Bill the least, but I found out he lives in my neighborhood.
So you're his councilman, huh?
1 street over. So I went down and I introduced myself to him, and I think he's going to be a terrific fit. I think it's important that we have some banking experience on our committee, and I'm looking forward to him learning, and we're all here to help you. And I'll close by saying that in the words of our very, very dear friend Rick Snodgrass, there's potential.
So would you?
So you need to make a nomination.
I would like to nominate Bill Curl for the position of Redevelopment Commission.
All right,
And
As the council.
I would be glad to second that nomination.
all right. So this is just placing a name in nomination. All those in favor of putting Bill's name in nomination signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Now, are there any other nominations before the floor?
I'll make a motion, we close the nominations.
Motion's been made to close the nominations. Is there a second?
Jerry?
Jerry did. Thank you, Jerry. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right. All in favor of Bill Curl as the council representative to the redevelopment commission signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Congratulations, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
Redevelopment Commission is where the action is, that's for sure. You can ask Jeremy and Randy, and we've gotten a lot done the last many years, last 10, 15, 20 years with TIF districts and the ability to stay out in front of our development in our community. And it's because not only of the leadership from the plan department, but having that redevelopment commission that understands the importance of staying ahead of the game and allowing our community to lead. And our growth has shown that. So really excited for you to get involved. Thanks, Bill. Did you want to say anything? You don't have to. Thank you.
As you can tell, he's a behind-the-scenes type of guy.
All right. Thanks, Randy. Item 2 is a group of conflict of interest statements. I assume you've all had a chance to look at those. There are several here. I would like to consider those en masse unless there's a reason to go through them individually.
Do you need a, what do you need?
Just a motion to approve the conflict of interest statements as presented.
I move that we accept the uniform conflict of interest disclosure statements as presented.
All
I'll
right.
second that.
Okay.
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, thank you. Item 3, Resolution 230201. This is a resolution that we discussed at the last meeting. We did not have a specific resolution. I asked you all for your approval for me to prepare a resolution in support of the legislation that is being considered down at the state legislature. And I presented that tonight for your consideration. So I will open the meeting up.
I just would like to say in my 24 years on the council, I don't think, I could be wrong, Mayor, but the whereas statements went to page 2, okay? Which, again, if you look at the whereas statements, why do we do what we do? Pretty powerful. And then close vote down at the state. This is a state responsibility. I was reading and trying to get up to date who supports this. This is not easy stuff, but who supports it? The Indiana Motor Truck Association, almost 50 mayors, one of them our neighbor in Goshen, along with the chief of police. And then,
One of them sitting at this table.
yeah, okay, and another one at our table. And then I read the Indiana Chamber of Commerce. I've heard of them before. Indiana Prosecuting Attorneys Council, Indiana Association of Chiefs of Police, Indiana Farm Bureau, Indiana Catholic Conference, Indiana State Poultry Association, Indiana Muslim Advocacy Network, just to name a few, asking the state to seriously consider this proposal for, again, high priority public safety in our cities and in our state. And that really had an impact on me. Not only that, the whereas and then this, but also the presentation 2 weeks ago. So
I think I mentioned 2 weeks ago that I spoke with our chief of police, a patrol lieutenant, and certainly there was overwhelming support from Warsaw Police Department. They unfortunately have to deal with a lot of these situations of uninsured motorists and motorists without license and potential hit and runs, and feel that this is an effective way to try and improve the financial responsibility of all drivers, as well as the safety by requiring a test be taken. So,
There were a couple of items that I had to look into that bothered me a little bit. And one had to do with whether or not this could be used as a voting, a way to get into voting. And there's some articles out there, and they even come from the state site, that the wording is so ambiguous, it could go either way. However, I reached out to a friend of mine who's also a lawyer to see what he had to say about it. And of course, he went right to the bill, which I didn't know exactly where that was. And it emphatically says, no, it cannot be used for voting. And I think that's something that was on a lot of people's minds. So that I think we can put to rest. And there's, and then I had a little bit of a concern. Well, I did have a concern, not just a little bit. I had a concern that the state, at the State House, it did not pass this year. And so therefore it will probably be brought up again next year. However, I believe that our resolution here points out, in particular, those things that we are concerned about. And so I'm behind this resolution.
thank you, Jack. I know we had a lot of discussion about it, and I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
The last information I saw, it passed out of committee 5-4.
It was sent to Senate Appropriations, and actually I talked to Senator Mishler tonight, and the bill did not advance out of the caucus.
Okay.
So it appears that it is, I won't say for sure because sometimes things can be reinserted.
Right.
I'm just going to say it's probably not in a favorable position right now.
Something that I found interesting, and I thought maybe Mr. Gross, the teacher, would comment on this, but this is a rare instance where the people at the state and local level are kind of speaking out about a federal issue. You know, the federal issue at this point being immigration, and of course, we have no control over that. And I think what I see us doing is while they're figuring out that mess up at this level here, we're trying to live practically
Yeah.
with our neighbors and the people that perform necessary jobs and want to be good parents and get to school and want to be able to get their kids to the doctor and not worry about being, stopped. And so I think we're doing our part down here, of the part that we have any influence over. And hopefully things like this will start to trickle up in this case and send a message also up further that we need to deal with this issue as a nation. But right now, we can just deal with it as a city and express our support for our neighbors that live here and contribute to our community and want to do the right thing.
Congressman Yakum was in town today and had a chance to listen to him, and the immigration issue came up, and kind of went back in history to the days when immigrants were let into our country based on the labor force and the needs of the labor force. And when the labor force was way down, they would allow many more folks in, and it was when the jobs were tight, they would tighten that up. Just an interesting historical perspective. But as you mentioned, Diane, there's a big issue that needs to be taken care of that's far beyond our abilities here. All we're doing tonight is saying that we recognize that there is a problem in our community, and this might be one way to make things safer, more financially responsible for everyone. And I would appreciate your consideration on that. Anyone else? All right, so with that, is there a motion to approve Resolution 2023-0201?
I move we approve Resolution 2023-0201.
Thank you, Jack. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jerry. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Resolution passes 6-0. Thank you. Last item. Last item is Resolution 2023-0202. This is a transfer of some ARPA funds. You may remember we allocated some funds to improve some parks programming, and I know Councilwoman Quantz has kind of spearheaded this and working with Larry and the Parks Recreation Department. So the money was, I think, put into professional services, and tonight needs to be just transferred to supplies. So, Larry?
Yeah, Joe's absolutely right. These ARPA funds were, and Diane she can talk on this a little bit, but we're asking for the funds to be transferred from 2401 310 to 2401 220 in the amount of $1,961, and then from 20401 310 to 204 445 for equipment purchases. And Stephanie, if you want to kind of tell them what we're looking at to do with these funds, that would be great.
Okay, so what I'm looking to do is add additional items to things that I'm already doing, just to make the programs bigger and better, add some new programs and events, and then just some supplies for things that we need that our budget doesn't allow for. So
One thing this does, these funds allows us to touch age groups that we're not touching right now. Some middle schoolers, teenagers, senior citizens, things of that sort. We're trying to take these funds, reach those participants that we didn't get to reach during COVID and during those times, trying to take this program, see how they work. There's definitely a need for them, but this gives us the opportunity to put those programs out there, try them out, see how they respond, and then, take this on in the future if they respond favorably. Diane, anything to add to that?
So just to give you a bigger picture, when we first received our ARPA money and our ARPA committee met, I requested $25,000 on behalf of the parks for programming. And part of this is, although the city of Warsaw didn't have to show deficit spending because we had an overall citywide need, we decided as an ARPA committee to put them in those main categories. And one of the things that we noticed during COVID was that people started using the parks a lot more because they were safe to be outside, but we also noticed an increased use of all of our online resources, and we actually developed some programs like Story Hour, and we passed out craft kits, and then we had little tutorials online where families could get together. And since we've come back from COVID, our events are packed out. I mean, last time at the Fall Family Carnival, I couldn't even walk through. There were so many people there. And so this is an attempt to add some extra like nights to those kinds of things, and to, like they said, supplement some of the populations that we felt really could benefit from our parks and were not being currently able to use it. And so what we did was we sat down, the three of us, and just really looked at, first they brainstormed, and then they brought it down a little bit, and then they brought me in, and we just looked at things that could fill those needs. And part of them are equipment needs that we'll have then for a long time, and that's the transfer that we're asking for. And then part of the money is to supplement current programs so that we can expand them and make them more accessible to people. And the other thing that we looked at was, are we doing something that's just going to be a one shot in the dark, and after this money is gone, we won't be able to continue it? And so they looked at things that with our current staff, with our resources, with what we expect to get in our non-reverting funds, and those are funds where we have fees for programs, and then it goes right back into supplementing the program, that by the time we get through the 2 years use of the ARPA money, we should be able to sustain these programs if the community shows that they want them. So overall, out of the $25,000 that we as a council appropriated, we're asking to spend $19,289.98 of that. And then part of that is this capital funds that we need in order to purchase the equipment. So our agreement was that when we came up with uses of ARPA money, we would just bring it back to the council as a courtesy and for your blessing. So detailed tonight, we presented this before the park board and got down to the dollars and cents. And I'm sure Stephanie would be glad to share that with anybody that wants to see it. But, I know exactly how much each cupcake costs for a different thing, after this meeting. And we don't need to delve into that kind of detail tonight here. But what I want to let you know is that this is a very detailed request, and it's based on current market. The reason we're bringing it before you tonight is we do have some commitments from some vendors and suppliers and shippers that if we can pass this tonight, then we can get that stuff ordered and hopefully be able to use it this coming season and then throughout the next year. And another request you guys had made was that we make our Parks Department more accessible year-round, and that we have things for families and different age groups to use. And so all of these things that she suggested start to address that issue too, that we can use things year-round and provide things right in our community for people to do, so they don't have to go outside of our community.
So
I guess
thank you,
I'm asking-
Diane.
Yeah.
Again, bringing this back to the council is typically just a courtesy because it's been appropriated. However, it does require this transfer tonight. So
Yeah.
that does need to happen. And I know when we first got our ARPA funds, I solicited the council for their ideas, and Diane talked about exactly what she's following through on tonight, and that's to expand that programming and get people outside and make the parks just that much more accessible. So appreciate that. Are there any questions?
I would say one other thing, we looked at this really hard because at our first discussions, we had all kind of ideas, and I just didn't feel that they were sustainable. We didn't have enough staff, we didn't have enough, supplies, enough equipment and everything else. And I want to do programs that are sustainable each year. And I feel that with this transfer, it allows us to get some of that done. And yet within $6,000 that we have for next year, it's very sustainable. And like Diane says, then we can use that reverting funds. And we feel that this is something that Stephanie and her crew can take on, without adding personnel and things of that sort. So it's kind of a win-win for both of us.
Thank you, Larry. All right, any questions before we consider this transfer resolution? Diane, I suppose you'd like to make a motion?
Yes, would you please pass Resolution 2023-0202?
All right, there's a very novel motion made.
I will happily second that.
A please and a happily second. Thank you, Cindy. All right, any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, are there any other matters to come before the council tonight? I did want to say hello to Jürgen Voss. Jürgen is a candidate for District 1 City Council, and he's here honing his skills, I'm sure. Thanks, Jürgen, for joining us. and all the rest of you that came out tonight. This is the point in the meeting where we're able to take questions or comments from those that are here. Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All right,
I know, that's all
thank you,
right.
Cindy. Good, I appreciate it. All right,
Same way.
did you get all these to me? I'm gonna go back and say hello to Bill.